Welcome in, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are live with James Atkinson IV, a candidate for Oregon governor, creating a space within our community to have real conversation about the issues that impact us every day. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone that we ask all questions and comments remain professional, so this space stays safe, respectful, and welcoming for everyone participating. James, I would like to thank you for being here with us. To kick things off, could you introduce yourself to everyone and share what your top priorities would be if you become governor?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the participants. And so my name is James Atkinson IV. I'm running for the Democratic nomination for governor of Oregon. My quick background, I'm an inventor, and I also ran in the race for mayor of Portland in 2024. And my biggest issues that I see for the state might be a surprise for number one, but it is, to me, what I call the urban-rural divide in Oregon. Over the past several years, there has been a lot of angst among constituents over essentially every issue. And which way should we try to get an issue to start to be resolved, when I think that without us being on the same page and agreeing to at least one thing, that we're honestly not going to see any improvement in any area. To me, that's the core of fixing any issue in the state. Without that, what we get, regardless of whether I'm elected or the governor is reelected, or if a Republican candidate is elected, we'll still see the same issues, because we're gonna essentially vote down party lines, which means half the population is going to be upset. So we're either going to concentrate on cities, the big cities in the state, or we're going to concentrate on the rural areas alone. And the issue with that is that all the bills are only looking at that part of the state. The other parts of the state have other issues. I've traveled the state since I started running in September, and it's extraordinary to me how every town is different. And I think people just see it as farmland versus cities. Mm-hmm. It's not. Every town is different. Every area is different. Every county is different. They have their own unique culture, their own experiences, their own pitfalls that they see every day. And we need to understand that there is a different solution for every area. It's not a one-size-fits-all type of solution. And if we can all agree at least on one thing, no matter how divisive the rhetoric is, no matter how offensive it is to one side or the other, if we can agree on one thing, that's the only way we move forward. There is no other way. That's why I'm running. That's my primary issue. The other big issue, I think, is honestly a mix between homelessness, crime, the housing crisis we have, and education. All of these different issues repeat themselves. We're not we're not coming up with a resolution. And I've spent, honestly, 30 years of my life, and that might seem a little bit hard to believe because I'm 40, but I've spent 30 years thinking about how do we fix these issues? How can we honestly fix it and everyone benefits from it? Not half, not 3 cities, everyone. It's a goal that might seem impossible, but that's why I'm running. That's why I'm trying to answer that challenge.
Thank you. I was trying to get it to share on Facebook because it says it's locked and it's not letting me unlock it. So I don't know. And nobody's in. People promote it. And so I guess a question would be, so, I've talked with many other people that are running for candidate for the governor. I've also talked to a couple that are running for Congress. So what, if you become governor, what is something that you can do within the criminal justice aspect, either in the courts or within the prison system as a whole? Have you been able to look into any of that?
I think the role of governors to set forward an example of what their vision is, an agenda, a plan, and it's up to the legislature to essentially craft a bill or bills to necessitate that plan. And within the prison system, to me, it's more than the prison system. That's the issue that I see going on there. There's multiple things that are connected. Primarily what happens when folks get out of prison. Not just what happens in prison, not just what happens in jails, but what happens when they leave. I think the main issue is that we try to focus our bills on a budget to either spend money or cut money to try to fix one area that they see cropping up in the prison system. And then we're saying we're fixing the prison system, where whether they're in there for a year or 10, when they get out, what happens? There needs to be an end to a cycle. So what my focus is not just looking at statistics of ebbs and flows and deducing what to propose for a bill to fix one particular issue of a prison system. It has to be all at once. And that means, as it is on my website, AtkinsonIV4Governor.com, Second Chance Network, where everyone is involved, businesses included, obviously voluntarily, but businesses included, licensing reform, background check reform. That's for people who are getting out so they stay out. You have to stop the cycle somewhere, and that's the issue. We're not stopping the cycle, and these folks get out of prison or jail, and they're starting from nothing. And I'm not necessarily saying to give them everything.
Correct.
But they have to have a shot to be able to live as a U.S. citizen, as a constituent of Oregon. Because what I don't understand is how anyone expects them to not go back to the same type of behaviors that they did before they went in the first time. That's not rehabilitation then, that's punishment. So we're punishing folks and then we're saying good luck. Rehabilitation gives them the tools to succeed once they leave. But once they leave, they need to be able to utilize those tools. Can't just be reading books, getting GEDs. There has to be these reforms in place, and that's what I would work on primarily. These individual reforms as well outside of prison. So when they leave, they have a realistic shot to have a full-time job and have a livable income, because the ultimate choice is, do they go back to the behaviors to go back into court and risk going back to prison, or can they sustain a life legally where they're going to work and making maybe 40 grand a year, 40 plus thousand? Can they find an apartment to live in to do that job? Because otherwise they're just going to go back in, and then we have inflated bills again. So my focus would be on several areas to fix that problem.
Okay. I agree with all those problems that, with employment and education and everything like that. Because with on the inside, within all the prisons, they offer GED, or they try to offer, if they have a community college that's willing to come into the facilities to put on the program. And then some of the prisons in the Salem area have the colleges. Not many of the ones on the west side do college, even though the prisoners are now able to be Pell eligible. So it's on DOC's hands now to decide what schools are going to allow the men and women to proceed in. And a lot of it would have to be probably by correspondence, by mail. I did receive a question. Summaries is not allowing them to comment in the live. So it says, how is Oregon measuring whether its prison systems is actually rehabilitating people, and what accountability exists when individuals leave custody worse off physically, mentally, or behaviorally than when they entered?
Yeah, first, thank you for the question. And I believe that's a fantastic question. I would say that it's a pretty loaded question, because it's asking about, not only their mental health, but also how are they doing as far as their well-being and how it's measured right now. And there's a number of different systems that are set up already when, depending on the crime, when someone leaves, for example, there's parole, halfway homes, different measures of surveillance that's used, and then there's case managers and so forth. But there's not a universal system that's set up to follow what happens to the majority of these folks, primarily like in jail, because a lot of folks in jail don't have lengthy sentences. So they might be in there for 30 days or 3 months or 6 months. So without that surveillance, which we don't really want necessarily, but without that surveillance, we don't know what happens. I've talked to folks that have just left prison, and they gave them some Narcan and said, good luck. Narcan.
Yeah.
That was the surveillance for them, because it's essentially what I'm saying. That's what they expect will happen, because there's no options. So good luck. We don't want to necessarily surveil folks, and because I think that's part of the problem as well. Like they earn their right to freedom, but the issue is we already have a decent idea of what happens. Their mental health is going to suffer. Their physical health is going to decline. They're not going to have opportunities that everyone else has. So I could say that we need to do a lot of programs to study and see, the trajectory of what happens to formerly incarcerated folks. But number one, that's going to cost a lot of money. And number two, we already know it. Well, we already kind of know what the issue is. It's keeping them out of jail. We know what happens in the current system, and we need to have the proper tools in place. So we already know that their mental health won't decline, that they have a decent shot outside of a prison cell, outside of a jail cell. Again, that's going to require pretty much everything happening around the same time frame, like the reforms that I'm referring to. And then when you see the numbers increase for like unemployment rate for formerly incarcerated folks and so forth. And when I say increase, I don't mean the unemployment increase, but I mean the positive numbers increase, where it's those types of things are changing. Then we'll already know that the systems are working and that they are not going back into court. They made a choice. They made a choice that they were rehabilitated, and now there's an opportunity for them to have a successful, healthy life.
So another question is about rehabilitation, that they want their loved one to come out rehabilitated. So what could we demand, I guess, DOC and the state to do to offer more rehabilitation programs and stuff? Because like right now, they offer NA and AA are the main two things that they offer. And then they sometimes get like restorative justice individuals will come in and do some programming, like victim impact panels and stuff like that. But for some, they can't do the program depending on what they're in prison for, or because they're not fully aware of said programs being offered. So how can we get like more programming? I know it's going to cost money, but a lot of these that come in are volunteer-based programs that go into DOC.
Right. My primary focus, if elected governor, number one is to, and I know it seems, I don't want to use the word impossible, but it's really difficult. Number one, to not raise taxes. And I know I'm running as a Democrat, and to also lower spending. As I alluded to earlier, it took me 30 years of thinking about every aspect of what occurs to try to figure out a way to get more without paying anything. And what exactly you said, things that are free, that's volunteer work, that's free, right? You start with things that don't cost anything and you go from there. NAAA obviously is great, in terms of getting folks clean, getting their mindset straight where they have a goal to stay clean, things like that. But that's not really doing much in terms of, again, stopping the recidivism. Just keeping someone off a drug, as horrible as it is, doesn't pay for an apartment. It doesn't pay for their bills. It doesn't pay for their food, their clothes, their housing. What it does is it keeps them off the drugs. So that's good. I mean, it is, but that doesn't really do much in terms of the potential behavior that can arise, because there's no solution. So the programs that need to be implemented have to be around getting these folks seriously into a situation where once you get out, do you have a chance to work as a barber, an HVAC, cosmetology? Can you own your own business? Preparing them for licenses, preparing them for GEDs. The programs need to that need to be implemented have to concentrate on what they're going to do when they get out.
Mhm.
That's why I say that NA and AA, while great, that's not looking at the word rehabilitation. The point of rehabilitation is to rehabilitate their life, not rehabilitate their behaviors. That's their decision, right? We have free will. It's to rehabilitate their life. And so we need to reallocate the funding that we use for a lot of these different areas, millions and millions and millions, into programs and say, we believe that you can be rehabilitated. We believe that you can be not just a functioning member of society, a successful member of society. We want to applaud you when a year from now after you leave. We don't give you things like Narcan. We don't say don't do drugs, like in terms of just hoping you don't do drugs and don't be homeless. Like what we hope is that in a couple of years you're making $50,000. No one, I don't think a lot of people think that way about these folks, but it's entirely possible. A lot of the crime that happens is a result of something. It's a result of something that happened in their life. People don't just grow up and decide to do things.
Yeah.
It's for a reason.
Yeah. With like doing, so, my background, I'm a former incarcerated individual. I got out, went back to school. Now, I just finished school last week for my bachelor's in criminology and criminal justice. And within doing all of that, doing the schooling on the inside for my AA and then coming out and not finishing the AA, but I transferred that to this bachelor's and doing all the work within the classes, you can see a difference than what a person actually goes through the system than what they're teaching in school. So it's like, we learned this one thing in this, for the criminology aspects of, the justice system. But then when you go through the system, it's totally different than what they're teaching you. So it's like, but with doing that, you see that most of the crime rate is within like the African American, the Hispanics and the Latinos, and then poverty, money and hunger and things like that. And I did my final project for my African study class was on murder and homicides within Africa. And that's like one of their highest crimes, which is due to the fact of poverty, money, and there was another one. Oh, guns was a very big one in that. And so it's like, looking at two different worlds, you have South Africa and then you have America, and they're doing things totally different than what we do. But it all comes down to those main things, poverty, wealth and all that. And so it's like we get out of prison, but we can't get a job. So we're still, under that poverty level because we can't get an actual job. If we do, we're lucky. But if we don't, then, we're SOL. And so I think that, having these other outlooks to be able to get employment once released, even, getting a degree, now I can see what I can do with my bachelor's degree and help others, because it's opening the eyes of others to see what they can do once they release. And so it all falls back on money, and money is, the world of everything. And so if we get something with that, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So another question coming in, it says, what are your top 3 concerns for the state of Oregon? What would you focus on first?
Great question. Again, thank you so much for the question. I really appreciate it. And I kind of went over a little bit at the beginning, but going a little bit more detail, and I'll try to keep it brief while still going into detail. Number one, again, is bridging that urban-rural divide. A couple of years ago, there's something called the Greater Idaho, project. I went to Elgin late last year and talked with the city administrator of that town, who invited me as a host. and talk to the city council and listen to that greater Idaho movement is still going. Even right now, there's a reason that they do that. There's a reason why they want to leave. And I feel like that's because my letter next to my name is a D, that I'm supposed to concentrate on certain parts of Oregon where these towns, these rural areas, they are crying out for help. They don't get a lot of the funding, even when we see, even if it's a rural area that voted Democrat, they do not get a lot of this funding. I heard when I talked with the Hood River County Democrats a couple weeks ago. I'm going to town halls in Enterprise, Oregon, Longview, talking to folks in Klamath Falls soon, Coos Bay, Mount Angel, Springfield, because they're saying the same thing over and over again. We're not listening. They're not getting a lot of the funding that they need because they have different issues. For example, climate change. Climate change is not the same in Portland that it is in Coos Bay or in Elgin or in Enterprise. It's different because of the geography. And no one looks at the geography. We look at the party. It has nothing to do with geography. And if we don't look at all of it, then what happens is we pass a bloated $1 billion+ bill that helps half the population, where with my focus is what I just coined as adaptive governing. But all it really is using local action laws and other laws to make the bill fit that area, fit that region, so that everyone benefits from the bill that has passed. And it goes to several areas. That's why that's my biggest issue. I don't think any of the other candidates even mention it, like even as any issue. And it is, because it's very sad that Elgin cannot even talk to the governor and get funding for the only river that they have in their town. Like it's rocks there. They don't even have sand. It's supposed to be sand, but it depends on the federal government as well, but they can't even reach them because, and not saying anything against, obviously the current governor or anything like that, but what I'm saying is they do not have the same voice that Portland has where I live. It's a huge issue. And the problem is, what happens if you were on the other side? Let's say I was a Democrat, I lived in a Republican state, and for 40 years, I was just told I was wrong. I'm going to get upset. I'm right. That's what they're doing. I'm right. And then what happens? Vitriol. And then we see name calling. Then we see shouting, like we see in pretty much every city council that we have. Without that, we don't fix any of these issues. That's why that's my number one issue. And I went into a little bit of detail on that for a reason, because honestly, my second issue to me is homelessness. Now, I understand that is primarily a city issue, probably Portland more than anyone else. And it's not because I live in Portland. There is homelessness everywhere. Every town, there is homelessness. If we don't fix that problem, we have all the problems we have now. In Portland alone, they spent almost $1 billion in 1 year for homeless people. Jeez. With all their services. $1 billion. Just Portland. And all we have is, I believe, an increase of around 25% of homeless people. Some people got into homes, but more people became homeless. And so now we're just seeing a cycle that just keeps going and going. And then taxes increase. Without fixing homelessness, which is, again, with my Second Chance program, where similar to folks coming out of prison, we need to believe in those people. We look at them, and I understand why, but we look at them and, we walk past them and we try to avoid it. We have to, because we have no idea what's going to happen, right? But the problem is we don't believe they can get a job. we're so concentrated on them getting off of drugs and pushing them in affordable housing that costs billions. We don't even believe they can get a job.
Yeah.
What about all the homeless people that got a job? It boggles my mind that we look at these same folks and say they're just, they're hopeless. And I know they're throwing stuff all over the place and doing all this, but they're on a drug. They are on a drug, right? And we're just trying to say, be clean and go in the home. That just inflates all of our everything. That inflates that doesn't do anything. It doesn't. And it's seen as the answer. It's not. How do they still get money? Even if they're in the house, unless they have SSI or some other type of government program, it's not going to happen. What I've seen homeless folks in these homes still panhandling. I've interviewed them when I was running for mayor. I mean, and unofficially, of course, but I interviewed these folks. I wanted to know. They panhandle because they don't have any money. Even though they're living in this house and they're off drugs, because they're required of drug testing in some cases, they still don't have any money, so it didn't solve anything. All they're in is a permanent shelter to me, and we're just spending more money. And we look at shelters as an option, and we look at all of these systems that we have. No, what we need is for them to get a job. So all these systems start to go away. And you have to start by believing that they can get a job. Things like 24/7 shelters with work requirements over a year, including businesses to hire them to get a full-time job and get out of homelessness. There's endless people I've met who were they were homeless and they are now working. A lot of them work in a lot of these places that help other homeless folks. And so I'm looking at this like, well, how do we think that homeless people can't have a job? If the person that's an employee was a former homeless person, was it just a miracle? No. I listened to their story. They got help. They got clean, then got a job right away. Then this, then this, then this. It was a ladder. There's no ladder here. Without fixing homelessness, we don't fix a lot of these other issues. Crime, drug use, all of these things are around this homelessness issue. And we just keep throwing money at it like that's going to fix anything. It's not, which leads to my third thing. And it'll be super quick because I know this is a long question, but or a long answer to the question, but it leads to honestly climate change as well, because if anyone doesn't know by now, my second invention was the endless cup. It creates water. It creates 8 ounces in 15 minutes. I did that last year. It took 30 years. Why did I run for governor? Right? Did anyone think to try to fix water? No. What do we do? Right now we are thinking in the Capitol, how do we spend millions to create different infrastructure plans to funnel water from one place to another? Did anyone just think, how do we just create water? No, they did not. And that's why the problem wasn't fixed. Now, I'm not saying the problem is instantly fixed with what I'm doing, but what if you took all of that money that you were going to spend on those dams and everything else towards an idea that's going to happen, and now you reallocate that to other areas of climate change? Instead of looking at how much are we going to spend this year to try to lower emissions by forcing automobile companies to do this and do that, it's just more money. We don't need money. We do not need any more money. Our budget is so bloated, it's ridiculous. And yet we're out of money because they're in 80 places that does nothing. It honestly doesn't. It's only a bit concerning to me because we look at these recent bills that were passed, and And, you know, if you've talked to me a little bit now, Stephen, you see that I really don't even talk about the other candidates in a negative way or anything like that, or anything they've done. I'm not going to, you know, try to be negative towards the hard work that they've put into all the bills that they've done to try to help. But the end result is, if anything goes wrong, we just end up doing more taxes, which seems like it can help, but then another issue happens, and then there's another bill. We're just doing the same thing. Climate change can't start to stop unless we start looking at the issue the way I looked at my issue. How do we create water? Because if people don't think like that, then we don't fix anything. How about, can you stop climate change? Does anyone even think that? Not curb it, not admit, can you stop it? Those are my 3 issues.
Those are some good ones. And speaking of water, today the Ontario put out a boil water, and Snake River Correctional Facility or institution is part of the boil ban. And I just got a message when we started this from Public Affairs regarding the boil ban, and I'm trying to figure out what they're going to do for the prison because the adults in custody can't boil their own damn water. So it's like, hello. So yeah, that's my next assignment after this, is to read her message and see what she said. But I do have a question regarding you saying you're going around the state and doing your town halls and stuff with other residents. During these town halls, are you speaking at all on the justice prison system, or are you just speaking on other things that are important?
Well, the bulk of the primary season honestly kind of started literally a few days ago, to pretty much for candidates. So I have plans to go, and I'll post it on my social media as well, just in case someone's in the area. But they're mainly set for next month. What I've done so far, like yesterday, I spoke at a PAC, mainly CEOs, other candidates, talking about the issues in Portland. I went to Elgin and talked with the city administrator, city council. I talked to Hood River County Democrats. All these were meetings. The town hall is set for next month in Enterprise. There's a forum in Longview that I'm going to again next month. I do plan on talking about the prison system because to me, it's part of a bigger issue. The importance of understanding how to solve these issues is that they are all combined. And if you don't look at every single one, then what happens is you put all of your money towards one, and the other issues collapse it, and then nothing to very little happens. And then we start all over again. So that definitely is part of what I'd be speaking about next month when I go to these forums and town halls and events, as part of one of the main issues that Oregon's facing and how these issues need to start to end.
Okay. So one major thing that we have, we spoke on it before, which is Measure 11, right? Which is the mandatory minimum sentences. And Kevin Mannix, who is a representative, I forgot what he was. He's the main bill writer of the measure. He also works on the advisory board for Oregon Correctional Enterprise, which is the prison industrial complex within the Oregon Department of Corrections. What can be done, or what can we do to push for a reform or a complete removal of Measure 11? Because if you look at it, Measure 11 is like part of the tough on crime bill that put people away for many, many, many years, even juveniles fall under that. Before they did some reforming on the juvenile aspect, and were able to get some juveniles out during that reform. But you still have the adults, even first-time offenders, that are slapped with 75 plus months on a plea deal. If they go to trial, then they're facing 300 plus months going through the trial. But with a plea deal, it's supposed to be the last option going through the court proceeding. I know for me, that was not the case. I had a plea deal within like 3 days of me being in jail. So what can be done to push the government to do some form of reform or some modifications to Measure 11 to add in like good time to the adults in custody that are behaving? You know, people are getting 45 plus years or whatever it is, and they're behaving while incarcerated, but they're not getting nothing in return for their good behavior. Now, if you look at it as a clemency aspect, some people can get out on clemency, but when they do that, then people are like, oh, well, that person should be in, or that person shouldn't have gotten this because of X, Y, Z. But then if you look at the federal pardons from the president, when he pardons an individual, it's okay. But when the state does it, it's not. So is there any way to try and push for some changes within Measure 11 to give these people some form of good time or work time off on their sentences? I know that was a lot at once, my bad.
No, that's all right. Made perfect sense. Yeah, I would say that I want to put it the right way. And I first want to say that when folks say they're tough on crime, I do understand where they're coming from in a sense. And when I say that, I mean, it's kind of what I was again saying before. When something happens for so long, people just kind of just throw up their hands and say, you know what, just negative, which is punishment to me, right? Punishment is negative. To do more of it, right? Because that's the only way that they'll listen. And that will deter crime. If the punishment is so harsh, hopefully they won't do the crime, right? If you can't do the crime, if you can't do the time, don't do the crime, right? Old saying.
Oh, yeah.
The problem with that is, again, it's the line of thinking that people are just born evil or just born in a crime. I want to do a crime today. Like and I know a lot of the crimes are heinous, right? They are, but they originated from some type of something. It could be a pressure point in their lives. It could be bad luck that just leads them to no other options, just in terms of where they thought they were going to go. There's a number of reasons, but we have to look at those number of reasons. We have to understand that these folks made a mistake, right? Now, we keep looking at what happens after the fact of how long do they stay in. That should have very little to do with anything. Like, honestly, like, and that's why, I'm not a huge fan of the mandatory minimums, because it's setting everyone on the same exact level. You take a particular crime and put 10 people, and you say, you all did this crime, so you get, let's just say, 2 years. Because
but I want to stop you real quick. That can be the same, but also depending on the county, like you're mentioning, like money wise within different cities from, different than Portland, not receiving as much money as Portland does or whatever. That's the same with crimes. Is here you can commit one crime and then in Portland you commit the same crime, but the individuals are getting two different amount of time because it depends on how the crime was committed is dependent on what they're going to do. And it also takes away the judge's discretion So when it's all under the DA. The DA gets to make the deal, gets to say how much time you're doing. The judge only does the sentencing part. They don't get a say in it.
Exactly. And no, you bring up a great point, and it's part of what I was ultimately saying is that, it's every single case should be viewed in its unique own way. Like, it's that case. It's not just this crime happened this amount of time, of course, depending on, the county and so forth. But the premise is the same. Like, what Measure 11 did to me was inflate the jails so much that we're just using punishment as the end all be all of everything. I mean, even if they do the 30 years, 30 years, they get out at 55 and they're just going to get a full-time, they're just going to go back into society and get a full-time job. Like, even if they didn't do any more crime, like, they're really going to be like, just get an apartment, get a job. Like, it has to be looked at from a point of view of, can these crimes be lowered so we don't have to depend on punishment? We don't have to depend on the court system. If we believe in things like where everything's just a mandatory minimum, no matter what, then we're just setting everyone out for a lifetime sentence, to me.
Yeah.
When you get out, you still have so many restrictions that it's very difficult to find a foundation for yourself. What if you had a family, and you have to take care of them again? And not just like kids, like your kids, but the family you had before you left, like your mom. It's that jail, that prison, to me, creates more issues than it solves. But at the same time, I understand why some folks just honestly think that way about the tough on crime. You have to be tougher so they won't do it. But, go back 30 years. Look at the whole crack epidemic, right? They raised it so much that if you found anything, you'd be facing what? 10 years per whatever. Did that really help? No, not at all. In fact, more people got arrested because they risking 10 years for how much profit did they make off of that sale? For a couple of dollars. When you go into crime, you have to, in my view, you have to get bigger and bigger to make the same amount of money that you would legally. You can't go into, crime, and obviously there's all different types of crime, but you can't have that mindset and then be like, okay, I'm just going to do one little bit here just to get by for the week. No, it's once you go that route, you're going that route. The problem with that is the bigger you get, the more you face if you get caught. So we need to somehow cut that where that is not the only option for them. Even going back to them being in juvenile prison, that it starts there. We took them out of school. Even if they go to these schools that are for folks that are now kids that are expelled, those they called it something different in Massachusetts, I believe, but it's the schools where they go to
alternative ed.
Yeah, the alternative schools. That is setting them up for a lifetime. It's almost setting up for a lifetime. Everyone I knew in those schools, all my friends that went to those schools, it did not end where they're 18 and they were going to college.
Yeah, that's the prison or the school to prison pipeline. I just did a post on social media about it because I seen somebody else did a post the other day, and it's like it's true. Because if you look at it, so the prisons pretty much use the same buses that the schools use, the Bluebird. The chow hall is the same pretty much like a school chow hall or dining hall. And so the only thing different is you're free walking. In prison, you're not.
That's it. It's just prison outside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and combating these things like again, around the same time, you have to combat all of these things at once to
Mm-hmm.
make a actual difference. Where imagine a situation where a person is just standing there and they have 3 options for a job and they have 2 options for an apartment and they have some expendable income enough to enjoy themselves and they have an actual choice there, or they could go back in that other direction where they have to build up the things that they're doing in a crime to make the same amount of money, or if they have the mindset they don't want to get rich, do that, but to for popularity and power and things like that. But they're never given a choice of the 2 options. That's what I ultimately want to do. It's not a tall task either. I think when I talk this way, talking about all these systems at once and how broken they are and how they can be fixed, people say, "Oh, well, it's not." Everything we look at, the reason why it's so daunting to folks is that because the mindset is that number one, people are bad. There's some people that are bad, and obviously, I'm not saying like the crimes that they're doing aren't negative, but what I'm saying is it's almost a mindset that people are born bad, like something didn't happen. Instead, I'm a devout Christian, and so and to me, religion, regardless of what people believe in, it doesn't matter. But to me, there should always be an option for folks. We shouldn't stop believing in anyone. And obviously, there's safeguards in place and things like that, but we shouldn't stop believing in folks and just throwing them away. I don't care if someone's been on drugs on and off for 30 years. Do we still throw them away? Why? What? No. Oh, well, we gave them a second chance. Second? They have 2? That's it. It's just 2 chances. It's sad. And I know why a lot of folks do it. They have no choice because they protect their money and so forth. But if we can get to a point where we start to believe that these folks can make it, they did juvie, they did a year, they can have a career. They can have a $45,000 career, $50,000 career, get their associates. And it might not be like in one of the biggest companies because they have, obviously limitations, but they could have a decent shot at getting that done. That's my dream. It's why I ran. I cultivated all these ideas in my head over decades, especially the prison system. Decades. I thought of every single thing for so long for this race. And if you have a network, we can stop that cycle.
Yeah, I agree. So I have another question. I know it's not a thing in Oregon right now because, I think it was Kitzhopper that stopped it, maybe Brown, but it's always a possibility of it coming back or, people pushing for it. What is your stance on the death penalty?
Well, it costs more to kill someone than life in prison. By the time that they go through all the appeals, the injection process, or depending on the state, however it's done, it costs more money still. And so if we're looking at it from a standpoint of money, the death penalty doesn't do that, right? So if we take money out of it, then we look at something like the death penalty. I don't think anyone should be putting anyone to death. Like, I should not have the capability to say, die.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my responsibility. That's not my responsibility to judge folks. That's God's responsibility to me. Honestly, that's just my personal view.
Yeah.
Like, I should not, nor should anyone have that power to do that. Now, does that mean that I want to implement everywhere? That's my personal thing. It's a hard question to answer in terms of policy, because every time someone tries to answer this, there's always this case that's so heinous that you're just disgusted by it, right? The
Mhm.
folks that are usually facing the death penalty probably did something pretty heinous.
Yeah.
And, so it's such a hard and loaded question to answer, whether you're just for or against in any situation, because you honestly don't have any idea who could create the next crime. I have apps on my phone, and there's negative story after negative story, but I hear some of these stories and they are awful,
Yeah.
awful. Just the word each day. I'm like, I've never heard of that yet. Well, that's new. That's a new way to do that. So me personally, to answer the question, I honestly think that they don't, like, personally, I shouldn't be telling anyone to die. That's God's responsibility. I'm not saying he says for people to, but I'm saying I shouldn't be judging in that manner. That's,
Mhm.
I believe it or not, I don't like power. I actually abhor it. I think everyone is a leader. So I don't want to use power to end a person's life. However, we need to look at the heinousness of these crimes that these people are, that have been done. If there's obvious evidence and so forth, then they definitely need punishment for that. But to put me in a box and say, for the rest of my life, I'm always against the death penalty. I don't think I would feel right in saying that, only because I don't know what's going to happen next. What if someone, I don't want to get into the instances, but there's a lot of bad things that happen out there.
Mhm.
But I don't think just ending someone's life is the answer. There's endless examples of folks that were innocent afterwards. Well, they can't come back now.
Yeah, I've
So
seen that in many other states, because me, I have to put my toes in other states. I sniff
yeah,
around to see where I can find information, because not a lot of people in Oregon want to speak out on different things. So I dip out of state and look into some other things, and there has been some that have been found innocent after they were killed. It's like, why now? Why wait? And you could have probably found that out before he was executed. And
right.
yeah, it's just,
That's why it's such a sad topic to even broach.
yeah,
That we're even any individual is put in that position where they have to decide whether someone has to die or not. It's a
yeah,
sad topic.
yeah.
I hope it starts to go away, just in terms of crime ending or
Yeah,
lowering.
well, with who's in office, he's for it. So which is not good to have a federal person for it. So one more question, I think will be the last one, is what is your stance on clemency? What is your outlook on individuals applying to be able to get released early? I know, like Kate Brown, she did a lot. Kotex, I don't think, has done very many, if at all any, because political bullcrap. But I do know that people have clemencies in right now, waiting to have an answer, and it just takes forever to even hear back from her or her office on the outcome if they're going to, approve it or if they're going to deny it?
Yeah, great question. And the thing about clemency is that it is one of the best tools, because we always talk about money especially when it comes to prisons, right? We never have
Correct.
anything like that. Clemency is one of the best tools to save money. The key with clemency is we need to make sure it doesn't happen again. So a clemency petition has to be thoroughly analyzed, several ways over, in order to make sure the right decision is made. But I am a big proponent of clemency, mainly because there's endless instances where just a number of things. It could have been a particular part of the case that altered something, or a missing piece of evidence, or doubt. All these different things, and people just languish in these jails. And I think, like, when you have someone like myself who might likely seem like I am a proponent for a lot of these things that help the prison population, that I'm soft on crime. No, it has nothing to do with being hard or soft on crime, right? Why is the crime happening? That is the only thing that's the issue for me. If a petition's approved and they are a functioning member of society, we save hundreds of thousands of dollars automatically, because they're no longer being paid, being taken care of anymore, in terms of like where people have to pay taxes for their beds and things like that. We need to lower the prison population, but we don't just need to let people out, right? If someone's going to be let out, we need to have them set up to be a functioning member of society. That's why I think a lot of times it's always for or against. There's never like a third way. No one ever, like I was talking earlier about, did anyone think this way? It's always for or against. Look beyond that. It's not just letting them out of prison early to save money. How do we get them to be a functioning member of society to lower the budget? Not just getting out. If I signed a petition, someone did 20 years of I don't like that example. Like someone did like 2 years of a 5-year sentence, and they're not a functioning member of society, then what was the purpose of the clemency? Yeah. The purpose of the clemency is to fix an error, or look at a situation and understand this person is a positive to society. They're not going to go back. It takes a lot of research. That's why a lot of times they take a long time. But I am a proponent of that. It's vital. It's absolutely vital. Yeah. And that has to be understood. Yeah.
So to come off of that did you hear about the story out of Salem of the guy that was commuted by Kate Brown, and he was on the police board and the fire board?
How long ago was this? Because
the end of December, beginning of January is when it all happened.
Kate Brown, okay.
So Kate Brown gave him clemency a few years ago when she was in office, before she left. This guy did all the things that he needed to do on the inside. She thought he was fully rehabilitated. He's done all the programs that he could do. He was doing his schooling, and he was released. He worked for one of the centers that help incarcerated people. and he was on the advisory board for the Salem Police Department, and they're up for re-election for the city mayor and some of the board members. I can't think of what council people. And something came up that he was a felon, and shit hit the fan, and they ended up removing him from his volunteer positions. And so their thinking is that he committed a heinous crime, that he shouldn't be an overseer of the police department. In my opinion, anyone that oversees anything, if they have a past and they know how things are going, why not put them in that position? Because they have a different outlook than just a normal citizen. So I don't know what a governor could do at a city level, or within rules and regulations through policies or whatever for a city, but my outlook is that they overstepped, and that this shouldn't even been a thing, because he has a different outlook on the police than a normal citizen. And he was also a policy type writer or something within the state capitol. And they just like threw him to the wolves.
Yeah, that's very sad. Yeah, I didn't hear that entirety of that story, but yeah, it's it's an example of a lifetime sentence. To me, it's the entire situation is extremely sad when we hear these types of situations occurring, that it just follows for life. And even the fact that he was even able to get to that position shows like these folks can be rehabilitated. They can be successful. So, in terms of what the city did and whether that was the right or wrong call, that is a city thing. So I don't want to, say one way or the other of how of their decision, but the entirety of that is honestly just a sad state of affairs. It's we got to get out of that lifetime mindset as everybody, not just.
Well, and the thing is the city of Salem, they have 3 prisons. They got Sandy Am Correctional Institution, they got Oregon State Correctional Institution, and then they got OSP. And so you figure they be like the city of second chances, and then all this happens. It's like, how can you be in a city full of convicts, that are living in your town, and that's how you guys get revenue, is because of them, all the stuff that they do and everything. And it's like, then you backstab when somebody gets out and is able to show that he has rehabilitated and is doing positive things within the community. So I guess the question would be, would there be anything that could be added to the clemency packet to allow said person to hold certain positions that they see that fit? Or is it just going to be up to because like with a pardon, sometimes a pardon can wipe your whole record clean through the through the president. But I've never seen a clemency packet, so I'm not 100% sure what's all entailed in that, of what the governor can dictate what said person can and can't do.
Yeah, I would. It's a great question, because honestly, I think in terms of over, as you can kind of tell my plans, like I'm a big proponent of like expecting local, county, city decisions, right? That's kind of my whole, a majority of my platform. So I don't want to like necessarily overuse any anything that I do to override or overrule what a city or county thinks is best for a constituent of that city. I think as governor, you know, it should be more of a recommendation on how to proceed for certain situations. And, you know, the results that you get from things that you accomplish will affect the weight of the recommendations that you're telling, you know, to different counties and cities and so forth. It's just a bit of a situation where, again, I don't want to like necessarily like have it where I tell, because what if one city has one thing and one other city has another, and then I'm saying for all clemencies, then you have to do this necessarily. So that's the only reason why I kind of structured the answer that way. But my opinion is that there should be referendums in place to be able to allow these folks that are felons to be able to apply anywhere. If they you know, passed every stipulation that was in place. Best way I could really answer that.
Okay. That's pretty much what it is, you know, looking at it that way, you know, offering certain situations, you know, to do certain jobs, which is, you know, what we all want, is to be able to get certain jobs that we have the background to be able to do. And in some aspects we can't.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it that you coming on and answering questions. Is there any final thoughts or information that you want to put out that others should know about?
Well, again, I am astounded and very happy at the turnout from folks. There were so many questions, and I hope I was able to answer them you know, in a way that satisfied you know, what you were looking for. So many thanks to the folks that participated. And my website is, again, ActionIB4Governor.com. The primary is May 19th. And I run a pretty unique campaign. So I don't accept donations. I don't ask for votes. I'm not looking to win this race. I'm trying to be the best person in this race and have the most people vote for me on their own volition. That's the message I carry across the state. It's an important distinction to know exactly where I stand on all these issues and whether you think I'm the best candidate for this position. So I do want to thank everyone for tuning in, and I hope everyone has a glorious day.
All right, James, I appreciate it, and I will be in touch soon.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much, Stephen.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
You too.